Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 937. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
And I'm Bishop Phil Ashey from the Diocese of Western Anglicans.
All right, welcome to another episode of Anglican Unscripted. We have a special guest with us this week. Phil Ashey, the Bishop of Western Anglicans, has agreed to sit down for a quick interview. And I'm going to give you a brief history. You and I probably first met in Kingston, Jamaica, when you were with the AAC a long time ago. American
my
Council,
goodness, yes.
And had a great time learning, certainly about your religious career and your law abilities. And you were a canon at the time.
Yes. So basically, Kevin, my first job was working with the AAC on the Anglican realignment, and I was at the Anglican Consultative Council meeting in Kingston, where you were, and we were there to help biblically faithful Anglicans in the process of developing an Anglican covenant, which of course was short-circuited later by the Church of England.
Yes, specifically Rowan and his crew wanted to make sure that whatever happened, what was it, Article 4, they didn't like so much, but that's a long time ago. So I'm going to have you on the program because you've been involved in canons ever since, especially the formational canons of the ACNA, and you've been in the task force to help us along, and you have proposed new changes to the canons, specifically Title IV. And I want to talk a little bit about that. How difficult is it to be a lawyer slash clergy in a church and work on canons that don't have loopholes?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I frequently said in these presentations that there is always the possibility of loopholes because of the deceitfulness of the human heart. So when we make canons, we do them for the sake of good governance and godliness within the church. And we hope to do it in keeping with the spirit and the truth of 1 John 1:9, walking in the light, so that we may have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus may cleanse us from our sins.
So up until this point, if somebody wanted to file charges against another clergy person, Title IV was invoked. And in that, you would have to use a bishop to have presentment. Am I following that correctly?
Yeah, there's different categories of presentments. One for clergy, and that includes presbyters and deacons, of course. And then you've got presentments against bishops. And there's two different processes for those cases.
What changes are you now proposing? Because I see now we have an intake officer and other groundbreaking, especially to the ACNA, ways to get into the process of bringing up charges.
Yeah. So what we discovered is that upon receiving a complaint, that under the existing Title IV canons, we didn't have enough bones or enough flesh on the bones to really help us identify all of the steps that need to be taken and the order of those steps, and to make sure that we were avoiding potential conflicts of interest, and that we were providing appropriate transparency on the one hand, and yet due process and fairness to all parties on the other. And there are just a lot of loopholes, a lot of gaps. And in the previous administration, some of the chancellors described it as being pre-canonical, and sort of carving out an area and saying, okay, well, we don't really have any guidance on this, so we'll just go ahead and do what we want. And sometimes, maybe oftentimes, we found that was unsatisfactory. So on the governance task force that I chaired, I began to draw together a team of people that the Archbishop had that I gave to him and which he approved, to begin to research a different kind of church disciplinary model, one that was not so much adversarial as it is inquisitorial. The whole idea being, if we're going to walk in the light, let's find out what the facts are, and try and bring everything in a much more speedy, transparent way, with off ramps for things like restitution, apologies, reconciliation, and other pastoral off ramps that don't necessarily go right into a presentment. And so we set our best minds to it, and our scholars looked all over the Anglican Communion, and we found some models in the Church of Ireland and elsewhere. And hence you have the new Title IV, which is as many pages as the whole rest of the canons. And of course, that raises the whole issue. If our guiding principles are minimalism and subsidiarity, how can we now have a document, a new Title IV, that's just so meticulous and so thorough and so comprehensive that it dwarfs the rest of the canons?
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the reasons is you want to avoid the loopholes, but when you're getting to the point where it has to be some type of action taken against a bishop or other clerics, you want to be sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's. And it's not just the church that's working on this; it's the world watching the church work on this, and they want to.
That's right.
They want to be sure. Is the ACNA who they say they are? They say they're transparent.
Right.
They say they're going to mediate these, and you're offering a new principle here, kind of conciliar in status. Explain that.
Yeah. So we already had a process that we developed of, we would take the lessons that we learned from provincial council, the previous one. We'd begin meeting and drafting, what kinds of things do we need to address, questions that were left hanging, and then getting feedback from the bishops themselves at their January meeting. And then the governance task force would meet, would draft canons to clarify, to add to delete things that were not helpful. And then what we would do is we would have a series of public commenting times on those drafts. And basically that served us very well, I think, for about the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then I think we were simply overwhelmed with some of the issues around complaints against bishops. And we realized we had to undertake this larger work of drafting a whole new Title IV. And now we have a process of commenting. We brought it in a town hall before the whole church, and now we've got literally a whole year of people commenting, because it's that important. We've got to get this right.
Well, people ask me, how will the ACNA be different? Tech had all these rules, and people were able to get around the rules. And I always said, well, looking just on the recent history of the last decade, the ACNA has held its bishops accountable. In fact, you've had 4 or 5 trials.
That's right.
That were very successful and very public, and people got to see the church at work in this. The last trial, and I asked your permission before if we could talk about this, was the Bishop Ruck trial, which ended Monday. We don't know anything other than it ended. Yeah. And there was some confusion, or certainly within the trial where the prosecutor and the assistant prosecutor resigned very publicly.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
So we came up with rules, rules for the courts. I was responsible to make sure that those rules were drafted. They were presented to the courts. That would be the Court of Extraordinary Jurisdiction, the Court for the Trial of a Bishop, and the Provincial Tribunal. And I believe from going back into my emails that I found a copy of how those rules were adopted. At that time, I think Bishop William Wantlin was chair of the Court for the Trial of a Bishop, and got the signed rules and sent them off when this question arose to the Archbishop. Here's what we found. Number one is that the rules are very specific about the need for finding the truth and for being under general principles of natural justice. And that's kind of a North Star, Kevin, that we're trying to find the truth. What is the truth? What are the facts? And then secondly, if there's any ambiguity, the rules actually provided that ambiguity would be resolved by the federal rules of evidence. And I did a little digging into that, and the federal rules of evidence, Rule 614, makes it absolutely clear that the court does have the right to ask questions. And the court does have a right to subpoena documents and evidence. And so it was, as I wrote that opinion up, as a canonist and sent that off, it left me with a question as to why the prosecutor and why the assistant actually abandoned the case at that point. Normally, and again, I'm also speaking from the perspective of someone. I'm about to celebrate my 43rd anniversary as a member of the California State Bar. I was a prosecutor.
Impressive.
For 3 years. I tried 60 cases, won 57. Several of those were sexual misconduct cases. And if I had a problem, I would always tell my head of court as a prosecutor and say, I've got a conflict of interest here. I've got a problem with this. And they'd bring in another DA, and I wouldn't walk away from the case. But those two principles that were clearly in the rules, frankly, I was surprised. It seemed as if, to me, that the prosecutor and the assistant prosecutor perhaps hadn't read the rules. So I didn't see a problem with it, with what the court did. They were simply looking at the evidence that the prosecution had actually offered and began to ask questions about it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your frankness of this. It's certainly been in the news for the last 6 weeks, and it has hit the desk of Anglican Unscripted more than once. So
yes,
it's nice to get your perspective on that. Now, as long as we're talking about canons, as you're well aware, that the jurisdiction of armed force chaplains has, for whatever reason, decided to step away. And I've been guarding my speech so much to not end up in some email from a lawyer that I'm still trying to be careful in how I describe all this. But they said that the canons allow them to leave as a diocese or as a jurisdiction anytime they want. And that's kind of what I hear them saying. What do the canons say according to Canon Bishop Phil Ashey?
Yeah. So I think there's some factual misunderstandings that are here. Number one is that apparently the bishop of the jurisdiction of armed forces and chaplains created a 501c3 independent body, independent of the ACNA, and without apparently letting people in the leadership of the ACNA at that time know, because it appeared to me in the bishops' meeting that no one had any knowledge of this. Now, maybe there's a document out there that said, "Hey, it's okay. We'll let Bishop Jones incorporate, and we'll contract with him, through his 501c3." But that was not the understanding at all of the bishops, and in fact, it's interesting that in the special jurisdiction canon that we formed in Title I, Canon 11, we reference the fact that the REC still had its position as an endorser, subject to the special jurisdiction under the canon of the ACNA, not under an independent 501c3, that the special jurisdiction would somehow work those things out. So you've got these two different bodies. One is the ACNA chaplains, which are supposed to be under the canon,
right?
And the canon says that this special jurisdiction, not jurisdiction, but this special jurisdiction exists under the Constitution and canons and is responsible to and accountable to the Archbishop and the bishops of the College of Bishops of ACNA. They're supposed to make reports and all kinds of things. And apparently, some of that didn't happen. So that's my preliminary assessment of where the problem lies. If you're saying, well, okay, the chaplains belong under this independent 501c3, they're not part of ACNA then. They're not under the ACNA special jurisdiction, because you've got two bodies, and a special jurisdiction is supposed to be the one that was endorsing them. As it turns out, it was this independent 501c3. I assume the lawsuit by Bishop Jones against ACNA will produce some kind of document that says that, the leadership of the ACNA contracted with him or delegated to him
invoices
under his
maybe some invoices or anything.
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't seen any of that, and it will certainly be interesting to see what comes of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's certainly the ACNA's contention that no, you don't have the ability to take the jurisdiction out. Yeah,
I don't believe you do. I mean, if we have chaplains, military chaplains, that need to be endorsed by the federal government, they can't be taken out of the ACNA unless presumably they go to some other denomination.
Yeah.
Maybe the JAFC becomes an independent Anglican denomination. But in terms of the Anglican Church in North America, if you're a chaplain and you're an Anglican, an ACNA Anglican, you're under the authority of the special jurisdiction as provided in Title I, Canon 11.
We'll have to see how this works out. It's certainly going to be in the news cycle for the next couple months, and I appreciate your frankness on this. Have you heard from other bishops and other people with questions about what's happening here? What's the? You don't have to tell me the rumors, but what's the gossip behind the scenes there?
Well, I really can't say much about the gossip or behind the scenes, because of course there is a lawsuit.
Sure.
And I don't know enough of what people are thinking. I think people are genuinely dismayed by the facts that they have discovered so far with regards to the JAFC. Mm-hmm. I think there is a deep, deep desire, and obviously the Department of Defense or Department of War, whatever you want to call it, they're willing to directly work with ACNA at this point, and have provided for such endorsement as necessary for the chaplains, and the door is wide open for those chaplains to participate in that endorsing agency. I know Bishop Jay will be overseeing that. We've got Bishop David Benna now, who's well known to many of us as a former chaplain, military chaplain in the U.S. Marine Corps, and as someone, a leader among the chaplains. So we simply want the chaplains to feel safe and to know that their endorsement is not in jeopardy, and that they are welcome to reaffirm their membership in the ACNA and their being under the authority of Title I, Canon 11, the special jurisdiction canon.
I did not know anything about endorsements until a couple weeks ago. I had to read up on it. I had lots of help from some chaplain groups explaining how that all works, and it's an interesting process. I'm glad the government, the military, offers that. But as far as I know, a separate 501(c) cannot be an endorser. Only a denomination or a religious entity can. Is that your understanding as well?
That would be my understanding as well. It is not an area that I'm, an expert in, so I would defer to those who have more experience with endorsements. But it makes sense if, if you're a member of the Presbyterian Church of America, PCA, I would think if you're a military chaplain, you'd be endorsed by the denomination that you're part of. And same thing with the Methodists, UMC, or with, any other denomination. And that's why the REC always had, their own ability to endorse that goes way back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you were here when the EMEA decided that they had gone. In fact, you were at the
yes,
up in New Hampshire with me when Chuck said it was a bridge too far.
Yes, yes.
However, a year later, it had all worked itself out. Maybe 18 months, And I would say the same was going to happen here. We have my last count was 150 of the 225 chaplains have decided to stay with the ACNA, and we'll just have to see what happens after that. It's one of those things we pray about. Church is not easy. That's why we have canons.
That's right.
Guide our doctrine and governance, and that's why we have canon lawyers. I really want to thank you for your time. It's clearly on the East Coast. It's 7:38, and you're finishing off your day in the West Coast. Any thoughts as to allowing for other jurisdiction type rules, or was that something that Bishop Jones was offering this great service with the jurisdiction? Will add it sideways into the ACNA and not incorporate it in a different way?
I don't know. I mean, there are part of what precipitated this were some complaints, and I think those have to be investigated. Again, I see us in ACNA turning from our accustomed kind of adversarial model of settling matters legally to a much more inquisitorial model, which is in keeping with the ancient church and courts of equity. And so I don't think any decision can be made about Bishop Jones until the facts are all investigated and ascertained. And I'm reminded of that great saint, Yogi Berra, who once said, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings."
That's true.
And we often have a temptation on social media to go ready, fire, aim, to draw our conclusions before all of the facts are in. And I think we're going to be in a season of fact finding on a lot of these matters, and there will be, a forensic audit of everything that's happened, over the last couple of years, and I'm looking forward to that and all the facts coming out.
Yeah, well, didn't you write a book called Anglican Conciliation? I mean,
conciliarism. Yes,
this is you. So this is Bishop Ashey at his best. So well,
thank you.
Like you said, we'll have to see how this works out. It's certainly disappointing, but in the end, it's just something that time works itself out. God works itself out, and the ACNA will be better for it.
It will be, and I've mentioned this also. When the Church of England still was adhering to scriptures, the Archbishops of Canterbury published a report, I think it was in the 50s, called the Lloyd Jacobs Report on reforming church discipline, and they said something really interesting. They said, the word discipline is the same, comes from the root disciple. And the purpose of church discipline is to make all of us better disciples. Sometimes that's going to hurt. Sometimes it means airing some dirty laundry. It requires a great deal of humility and willingness to walk in the light, no matter what the cost may be. But for the sake of us all becoming better disciples and followers of Jesus Christ, that's the overarching purpose, I believe, for church discipline.
What a great closing statement. I really appreciate that. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
Thank you.
I've had a special guest, Bishop Phil Ashey from Western Anglicans, on today, and I want to thank you again for your time.
You're most welcome, Kevin. God bless you.